Ilara arrived in the small town with a suitcase full of memories and a heart heavy with loss. The loss of her husband Thomas in a tragic accident had left her shattered. Seeking solace and a fresh start, she had left the bustling city life behind, drawn to the tranquility of the countryside. The old Victorian house she bought stood on the edge of town, a majestic sycamore tree gracing its front yard. Its sprawling branches, reaching towards the heavens like long, comforting arms, seemed to beckon her closer. Ilara felt an instant connection to the tree, its presence a soothing balm on her wounded soul. In the quiet solitude of her new home, Ilara found herself drawn to the sycamore tree each day. She would sit beneath its canopy, a lone figure finding comfort in the gentle rustling of leaves and the dappled sunlight filtering through the branches. The tree became her sanctuary, a place where she could grieve openly and remember Thomas without the weight of pitying glances. It was here, under the sycamore's protective embrace, that Ilara began to heal. As days turned into weeks, Ilara started exploring the small town. She discovered a quaint bookstore tucked away on a quiet street, its shelves overflowing with literary treasures. One afternoon she stepped inside, the scent of old books filling her senses with a familiar comfort. As she browsed the shelves, her fingers trailing along the spines, she noticed a man standing by the window, sunlight illuminating his profile as he read a book. He looked up, catching her eye, and for a fleeting moment their eyes met. Ilara quickly looked away, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't explain it, but something about the stranger's gaze stirred a long-dormant feeling within her. A flicker of curiosity, perhaps, or maybe something more profound. As she left the bookstore that day, she couldn't shake off the feeling that their paths were destined to cross again. Little did she know that their encounter was just the beginning of a journey that would lead them both towards healing, hope, and a love story written in the language of nature. Ilara found herself frequenting the bookstore more often, each time hoping for another glimpse of the man who had captivated her with a single look. His name, she learned from the bookstore owner, was Luca, and he was a woodcarver who lived in a small cottage on the outskirts of town. Luca, too, was no stranger to loss. His wife, Sophia, had succumbed to a long illness a few years ago. They shared a love for art, nature, and the quiet beauty of their surroundings. Their paths crossed again, not within the confines of the bookstore, but at the local farmer's market. Ilara was admiring a vibrant display of sunflowers when she noticed Luca standing a few feet away. He was holding a bouquet of lilies, their white petals a stark contrast to his dark attire. Their eyes met across the bustling crowd, and this time neither of them looked away. A silent acknowledgement passed between them, a shared understanding that transcended words. They began encountering each other regularly, at the market, the library, the park. Their conversations were slow to start, filled with long pauses and unspoken emotions. Yet, in the silences, they discovered a profound connection, a shared language of grief that needed no words. They understood the weight of absence, the ache of longing, the bittersweet pangs of remembrance. In each other's presence they found solace, a quiet understanding that transcended the awkwardness of their shared grief. One breezy afternoon they found themselves sitting on a bench in the park watching children chase pigeons. Ilara was the first to break the silence, her voice soft and laced with a hint of melancholy. "I miss him," she confessed, her gaze fixed on a pair of squirrels scampering up a nearby oak tree, every day, in every way. Luca nodded, his eyes reflecting her pain. "I miss her too," he whispered, his voice rough with unshed tears. "Some days, the world feels too quiet without her laughter." As autumn painted the town in hues of gold and crimson, Ilara and Luca's bond deepened. They found solace in sharing stories of their loved ones, keeping their memories alive through words and laughter. Ilara would often speak of Thomas's infectious laugh and his passion for photography, while Luca reminisced about Sofia's artistic talent and her love for humming old Italian melodies. One crisp afternoon, Luca invited Ilara to his workshop. The air was thick with the scent of cedar wood and the rhythmic tapping of a chisel against wood. He showed her his latest creation, a wooden sculpture of a woman with flowing hair, her face turned upwards as if basking in the sun. "It's Sofia," Luca said, his voice laced with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "I tried to capture her essence, the way she found joy in the simplest things." Ilara was moved by the raw emotion etched into the wood, a testament to Luca's love for his late wife. "She must have been extraordinary," Ilara whispered, her fingers gently tracing the curve of the sculpture's cheek. Luca nodded, his eyes welling up. "She was. She taught me how to see the world through different eyes, to find beauty in the most unexpected places." They spent the rest of the afternoon in comfortable silence, each lost in their thoughts, the rhythmic tapping of Luca's chisel providing a soothing background score to their shared grief. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the workshop, Luca turned to Ilara, his gaze sincere. "I want to share something with you," he said, leading her to a corner of the workshop where a large canvas lay covered with a white sheet. He pulled the sheet away, revealing a stunning portrait of a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. "This is Sofia," Luca said, his voice a mere whisper. Winter arrived, blanketing the town in a pristine layer of snow. The sycamore tree outside Ilara's window stood bare, its branches reaching towards the sky like skeletal fingers. Yet even in its nakedness, Ilara found a certain beauty, a reminder that even in the harshest winters, life endures. One evening, while sipping hot cocoa by the fireplace, Ilara had an idea. She shared it with Luca the next day when he visited her, his presence bringing warmth to her cozy abode. "I was thinking," Ilara began, her voice hesitant at first, "we could plant a tree in memory of Thomas and Sofia." Luca looked up from the book of poetry he was holding, his eyes reflecting genuine interest. "A tree!" he repeated, a thoughtful expression settling on his face. "That's a beautiful idea, Ilara." They decided to plant 2 trees, a sycamore for Thomas and a willow for Sofia, its graceful branches mirroring her elegant nature. On a crisp winter morning, they went to the local nursery and chose 2 saplings. They found a perfect spot for them on a gentle slope overlooking the town. As they took turns digging the earth, the cold air stinging their cheeks, they talked about their loved ones, sharing anecdotes and memories that painted vivid pictures in their minds. With each shovel of earth they moved, with each gentle pat they gave the soil around the saplings, they felt a sense of release, a lifting of the heavy weight of grief they had been carrying for so long. As the sun began its descent, casting a golden glow on the snow-covered landscape, they stood back to admire their handiwork. 2 fragile saplings, standing tall against the backdrop of a winter sky, represented hope, resilience, and the enduring power of love and memory. The trees stood as silent sentinels, a testament to the love that transcended physical boundaries, their roots reaching deep into the earth, intertwining with the memories of those they had loved and lost. Spring arrived, breathing new life into the small town. The trees sprouted fresh green leaves, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. Ilara and Luca continued to meet regularly, their shared grief evolving into a deep and abiding friendship. They found solace in each other's company, their conversations flowing effortlessly, their laughter echoing through the trees. One warm spring evening, as they sat beneath the sycamore tree in Ilara's front yard, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of pink and orange, Luca turned to Ilara, his eyes filled with an emotion she couldn't quite decipher. "Ilara," he began, his voice husky with emotion, "I never thought I'd find happiness again after Sofia." Ilara's heart skipped a beat. She had been harboring similar feelings, but was afraid to voice them. "Luca," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the rustling leaves, "I understand." He took her hand in his touch sending a warm current through her body. "I know this might seem too soon," he said, his thumb gently stroking her hand. "But I feel a connection with you, Elara, something I haven't felt in a long time." Elara looked into his eyes, and in that moment she knew that what they shared was more than just friendship. It was a love born out of shared grief, a love that had blossomed under the watchful eyes of the sycamore tree. "I feel it too, Luca," she confessed, her voice filled with emotion. "I never thought I'd love again after Thomas, but you—" She trailed off, unable to articulate the depth of her feelings. He leaned in and kissed her forehead, his lips lingering on her skin. "It's okay to love again, Elara," he whispered, his words a promise carried on the gentle spring breeze. "Thomas and Sophia would want us to be happy." Summer arrived, painting the town in vibrant hues of green and gold. The sycamore and willow trees they had planted stood tall and proud, their branches intertwining, creating a natural archway leading to the meadow where Elara and Luca decided to exchange vows. The ceremony was small and intimate, attended by close friends and family who had witnessed their journey of healing and love. Elara looked radiant in a simple white dress, her hair adorned with wildflowers. Luca, handsome in a navy suit, couldn't take his eyes off her. As they stood facing each other, the sun filtering through the leaves, casting a dappled glow on their faces, they exchanged vows that spoke of love, loss, and the promise of a future filled with hope and happiness. They vowed to honor the memories of Thomas and Sophia, to keep their spirits alive in their hearts. The reception was held under the canopy of the sycamore and willow trees, their branches adorned with fairy lights that twinkled like stars. The air was filled with music, laughter, and the sweet scent of honeysuckle. As Elara and Luca shared their first dance, their movements graceful and effortless, a sense of peace settled over them. They had found solace in each other's arms, their love a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to heal and love again. As the evening drew to a close, Elara and Luca stood hand in hand, watching their guests depart. The setting sun cast long shadows across the meadow, painting the sky in hues of purple and orange. "Thank you," Elara whispered, turning to Luca, her eyes filled with gratitude for everything. He smiled, his eyes reflecting her emotions. "We found each other, Elara," he said, "in the midst of our grief, in the shadow of loss." A year had passed since Elara and Luca exchanged vows under the sycamore and willow trees. The first anniversary, a day that could have been fraught with sadness, was instead a celebration of love, resilience, and the enduring power of memory. They woke up to a beautiful spring morning, sunlight streaming through the windows of their cozy home. After a leisurely breakfast, they decided to visit the meadow where they had planted the trees in memory of Thomas and Sophia. As they approached the meadow, they were greeted by a sight that took their breath away. The sycamore and willow trees had grown taller, their branches reaching towards each other, their leaves intertwining, creating a heart-shaped opening in the canopy. It was as if nature itself was acknowledging their love, their journey of healing, and the enduring bond they shared with those they had loved and lost. They stood hand in hand under the trees, sunlight filtering through the leaves, casting a dappled glow on their faces. The air was filled with the sweet songs of birds and the gentle rustling of leaves, a symphony of nature that seemed to celebrate their love. Elara leaned against Luca, resting her head on his shoulder. "They would have liked this, wouldn't they?" she whispered, her voice filled with emotion. Luca wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. "I think so," he said, his voice tinged with a hint of sadness. "They would have wanted us to be happy." They spent the rest of the day in the meadow, reminiscing about Thomas and Sophia, sharing stories and laughter. They felt their presence in the gentle breeze, in the warmth of the sun, in the rustling leaves of the trees they had planted in their memory. Years turned into decades, and the sycamore and willow trees continued to thrive, their branches reaching towards the heavens. their roots intertwined deep beneath the earth. Ilara and Luca built a beautiful life together, a life filled with love, laughter, and the quiet joy of companionship. They had children of their own, who grew up playing under the shade of the sycamore and willow trees, their laughter echoing through the branches. Ilara and Luca made it a tradition to visit the meadow every year on their anniversary and on the anniversaries of Thomas and Sophia's passing. They would sit under the trees, sharing stories of their loved ones with their children and grandchildren, keeping their memories alive. They taught them about the importance of cherishing loved ones, of holding on to memories, of finding beauty in the cycle of life, loss and love. As they grew older, Ilara and Luca found solace in the wisdom of the trees. They had witnessed the changing seasons, the harshness of winter, the rebirth of spring, the vibrancy of summer, and the melancholic beauty of autumn. They had weathered storms, stood tall against adversity, and emerged stronger, their roots intertwined, their branches reaching towards the light. One cool autumn afternoon, as they sat on a bench under the sycamore tree, watching their grandchildren play in the fallen leaves, Ilara turned to Luca, her eyes filled with a lifetime of love and shared memories. "We've lived a good life, haven't we?" she whispered, her voice raspy with age. Luca took her hand in his touch as familiar and comforting as ever. "We have," he said, his eyes reflecting her emotions, "and it's all thanks to them." Time, like the relentless flow of the river, continued its course. Ilara and Luca, their hair now snowy white, their faces etched with the passage of time, were entering the twilight of their lives. Yet their love for each other and the memories of those they had loved and lost remained as strong as ever. They knew their time on earth was drawing to a close, but they embraced it with grace and dignity, finding comfort in each other's presence and the enduring beauty of the natural world. One crisp autumn day, as the last leaves fell from the sycamore and willow trees, blanketing the ground in a carpet of gold and crimson, Ilara and Luca closed their eyes for the final time. They passed away peacefully, hand in their sleep, their souls reunited with their loved ones in the ethereal realm where time held no sway. Their children and grandchildren gathered under the sycamore and willow trees, their hearts heavy with grief yet filled with gratitude for the love and legacy Ilara and Luca had left behind. They shared stories, laughter and tears, their voices echoing through the trees, a symphony of love and remembrance. The sycamore and willow trees continued to stand tall, their branches reaching towards the heavens, their roots intertwined deep beneath the earth, a timeless symbol of enduring love, unwavering hope, and the comforting knowledge that even though our physical presence may fade, the memories we create and the love we share will live on in the hearts of those we leave behind until the last leaf falls.